Chapter 2. Falling in Love. The days that followed felt like the city itself had conspired to weave them closer. Adrian had always considered himself a wanderer, not tied to places, not tied to people. But now he found himself waiting for messages on his phone, checking the time, calculating how long until their next meeting. Elena was the same, though she carried it differently. For her, each encounter was folded quietly into her world of music, becoming chords and notes that slipped into her improvisations without her even noticing. They decided to meet at a small cafe by the sea, one of those hidden places only locals knew, half buried in ivy, with chipped tables that looked out over the harbor. When Adrian arrived, Elena was already there, seated with her hands wrapped around a cup of tea. She smiled when she saw him, the kind of smile that begins shyly but finishes with warmth, like sunlight breaking through morning fog. "You're early," he said, sliding into the chair opposite. "And you're late," she teased, glancing at his watch. He looked down, then grinned. "Only by 2 minutes. 2 minutes is still late." They laughed, the ease between them already natural. The cafe smelled of salt and roasted beans, and outside, fishing boats rocked gently in the harbor. Adrian couldn't resist lifting his camera from its bag, adjusting the focus, capturing the way the lamplight caught in her hair. "Don't," Elena said, half hiding her face with her hands. "Too late," he murmured, pressing the shutter. "You'll thank me later." She peeked at him through her fingers, laughing. "You make everything into an image, don't you?" "Guilty," he admitted. "And you?" "You probably make everything into music." Her expression softened. "Maybe. Sometimes when I walk down the street, I hear rhythms in footsteps, or chords in the way the wind moves. It's not really something I control." He lowered his camera, studying her. "I'd like to hear you play someday." "You will," she promised, though the way she said it carried both confidence and something fragile beneath. The afternoon drifted into evening. They talked about books, about childhood spent in different corners of the world. His filled with travels from one city to another, hers rooted in this town. The same streets walked 1,000 times but never tired of. Adrian admitted he sometimes felt like a ghost, passing through places without ever belonging. Elena confessed she sometimes felt caged, afraid she'd never see beyond the edges of her world. "Maybe we balance each other out," he said quietly, his gaze lingering on the horizon where the sky met the sea. "Or maybe we'll pull each other apart," she replied, not sadly, but with a kind of thoughtful honesty. Adrian turned his head sharply, studying her face, but she only sipped her tea as though she hadn't said anything unusual. That evening as they parted, something had shifted. The spark was no longer a fragile thread. It was beginning to root itself, delicate but determined, like a vine seeking sunlight. Their second meeting came 3 nights later, in the old concert hall Elena had told him about. The building had seen better days, marble cracked, chandeliers missing crystals, but its grandeur lingered, a ghost of past elegance. Elena had keys. She sometimes came here late at night to practice when no one else was around. When Adrian entered, he found her seated at the grand piano, her fingers already moving. The notes filled the cavernous space, echoing against the vaulted ceiling. He stood silently, not wanting to interrupt. He raised his camera, but then lowered it again. No photograph could capture what he felt in that moment. The way her music seemed to seep into his chest, filling spaces he hadn't realized were hollow. When she finished, she looked up and saw him. A faint blush rose to her cheeks. "I didn't hear you come in." "I didn't want to disturb you," he said softly. "That was beyond words." She smiled shyly. "It's just something I've been working on." Adrian approached the piano, sitting beside her on the bench. "Play it again." And she did, this time slower, letting the notes linger. He closed his eyes, letting the sound wash over him. His shoulder brushed hers lightly, and neither of them moved away. When the last note faded, they sat in silence. The kind of silence that was not empty, but brimming. Adrian opened his eyes. "You don't realize it, do you?" "Realize what?" "That you're extraordinary." Her gaze faltered, her lips parting slightly as if to argue, but no words came. Instead, she simply looked at him, and in that look, something shifted again. a deepening, a recognition. The days became weeks, and their lives began to intertwine. They strolled through markets, pausing to taste figs and olives offered by smiling vendors. They climbed the cliffs at dawn, watching the city stir awake beneath them, the sun painting the sea in molten gold. They lingered in bookshops, pulling volumes at random and reading lines aloud to each other, laughing at the oddities, lingering on the poetry. Small details became treasures. The way Elena tucked her hair behind her ear when she was nervous. The way Adrian squinted through his camera lens, his brow furrowed as though chasing truth itself. Sometimes they argued playfully, over which street had the best coffee or whether dusk or dawn was more beautiful. But even in disagreements, there was a warmth, a safety, as though the very act of opposing each other was just another form of closeness. An inner monologue. Elena, it's frightening how quickly he's become part of my days. I've always guarded myself, always believed love was something for other people, not for me. But with him, the walls feel unnecessary. And yet, if he leaves, what will I be left with? Inner monologue. Adrian. I thought I was incapable of staying. Every city was a temporary stop, every face just passing through. But she makes me want to pause, to see what happens if I don't run. But can I give her what she needs? Or am I only pretending I can belong? The first touch came almost accidentally. They were sitting on the steps by the harbor, watching fishermen mend their nets in the fading light. Elena shivered slightly. The evening had grown cooler. Without thinking, Adrian reached for her hand. Her fingers hesitated, then curled around his. Warmth spread instantly, a current that silenced every word. They didn't speak for a long time. The only sound was the distant cry of gulls and the slow lap of water against stone. When Elena finally turned to him, her eyes held something unspoken, something both vulnerable and unafraid. Adrian leaned closer. The kiss was not hurried. It was hesitant, searching, almost reverent, as if both of them were afraid that moving too quickly might shatter what they had been building. But once it deepened, the world seemed to tilt, the harbor, the city, the sky itself fading into the background. When they finally pulled apart, Elena let out a soft laugh, almost a sigh. I didn't think you'd be the kind to take risks. Maybe I wasn't, he admitted, brushing his thumb against her hand. Until you. From that night on, something in them changed. They grew bolder. Not reckless, but freer. Adrian photographed her often, sometimes catching her mid-laugh, sometimes lost in concentration at the piano. Elena began composing pieces that were lighter, brighter, as though his presence had woven itself into her music. Their days were stitched together by moments, a brush of shoulders in a crowded street, whispers in dim cafes, laughter echoing under arches of stone. And though neither of them said it aloud yet, love had already taken root, winding itself quietly around their hearts. End of the second chapter. Subscribe and like this video so you don't miss the next chapter. And the third chapter will be about conflicts and struggles.